Hello, and this is not trackside tips. It's a little bit of a different scenario right now. It is Saturday, April 11th, and we're just going to do a little quick update for the ASHA industry. I have Don McDougall and Fred Gillis here, and we have got some questions for you. And we hope that you can just give us a little bit of insight into this very strange time that we're going through right now and what the horse racing industry is doing to kind of get back on their feet. So to start, Fred, I want to start with you since you are our executive director and we're kind of the person that we are turning to for our answers at this time. You've been in this industry for 35 plus years. What's the closest thing that you can remember that is anything that can even be compared to the situation that we're in right now?
I can't compare anything to it, Storm, to be honest. This is a unique situation.
Hmm.
Uh, we were disrupted back around 2008 when Stampede went down. We had to think on our feet, go a lot of places, but nothing like this. This is a very unique situation. I think we're still thinking on our feet, trying to react to it. Uh, but a month into it, we're getting some grips on it. We've had lots of meetings. There's ongoing meetings every week, industry meetings with all of the participants, and we're trying to move forward as best we can. Uh, it's a difficult situation, but it's not unique to Alberta. It's worldwide, and so we're just a portion of it, and we are trying to deal with our little corner of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to expand on that a little bit, as a retired horseman, tell me what your process would have been during a mid-season racing disruption like this when you were racing.
I guess probably from my point of view, the first thing would have been to try and have an end date, to have something to shoot forward to. When is it going to start up again? So I would know how to treat my race horses, how to treat my 2-year-olds in training. So I think the most important thing would have been that, so that you could set up a schedule based on when you would start up again.
Yeah, definitely. And then Dawn, I want to hop over to you and ask a similar question, but from the owner's perspective, what different steps have you taken during the shutdown?
Well, it's something, Storm, that, like I had said before, like we said in conversations, nobody's ever seen anything like this. And I kind of agree with Fred in that the closest I can think of is when Stampede Park shut down, and all of a sudden you had to know that were going to race in a whole lot of different areas at a whole lot of different times. From an owner's perspective, I think you kind of look at it horse by horse, and some of the older horses, you have conversations with your trainers and you hope that he's going to decide to give them a little bit of time to rest them. It's a really terrible time for it to happen, in the fact that we just came off really about a 2-month break for a lot of the horses. But
Right.
at least some of the aged horses that are obviously going to race now, whenever we get back going till the end of the year, it's probably good to kick them out in the field for about a week or two. And as Fred was also saying, it's nice if the industry, it's a little bit of throwing at a dartboard right now, but it's nice if the industry can give you a little bit of a target or a little bit of a date. Because if the industry all of a sudden comes back and says, well, okay, we're going to start racing in 2 weeks, but you've had your horses out in the field for a month, it really doesn't help you a whole lot, because you're not going to be ready in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
So there's
absolutely.
a lot of communication that has to go on. That's why we pay Fred the big bucks to be in the seat that he's in, and to take all the heat and the questions. And we're all willing to answer as much as we possibly can. But Fred's involved a lot more in the meetings with all the stakeholders and with Standardbird Canada and other bodies. So there's a lot of fingers kind of in the pie right now. But yeah, no, it's something, and even in your personal life, it's just something that, if you've ever seen the movie Groundhog Day, that's what I feel like I'm waking up to every. I can't remember what day it is almost any time of the week. I know tomorrow is Easter Sunday, so I've got a little bit of a grip on it for right now, but by mid next week, I'll be lost again.
Yeah, we're a little bit in the twilight zone. And then for both of you, we're coming up on a month since the last day of races were conducted. You guys are both on the board. What has Ash been doing over that period?
Fred, you go ahead first.
Yeah, I think we're trying to instill a little bit of confidence in the horsemen, that we're doing everything we can possibly. Uh, I've gone out and found some hay at a discounted price for all the horsemen. We've had anonymous person donate 8,000 pounds of oats. You do all the little things. You try to stay in touch, hands on with the trainers. Let them know you're there. we conduct the industry meetings and phone calls. And so the process carries on, even though most of the time the horsemen can't see a result of what's happening. A lot of people, excluding myself, as Don said, I get paid for it. A lot of the board, a lot of the people put in a lot of hours, Storm, and don't get paid for it and don't get a lot of recognition. And obviously because they care.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and from our board perspective, I mean, a lot of people sometimes have the wrong opinion. They think Fred makes a lot of decisions on his own and kind of moves forward. But Fred reports to a board of directors, and any major decision over something goes to the board first. There's a couple things that have been done. Obviously, there was a little bit of money given out to the trainers based on horses that had raced and stuff, and that was kind of a joint thing between Fred bringing up different opportunity and communicating with HRA and obviously getting it approved by the board also. And obviously I've been involved a little bit more in communications and media and working along with you, Storm. So at the very beginning, we did a video with Dave Kelly and tried to go through a couple. But I think even at that point, and you can probably answer this as much as I could, I had no idea that we would be sitting here a month and a half later and still not really having a clue too much about what was going on. I kind of thought it might be something like the flu, where within a week or 10 days, it kind of goes past. People who get it, people who don't, move on. But the board's just trying to, anything that Fred comes up with that's some kind of an issue that we've got to deal with on any kind of a basis, we try to keep in touch in communications. And I've gone back to the backstretch a couple times, same way as Fred, and try to keep morale up as much as you possibly can. There's only so much you can obviously do when you don't have a whole lot of answers. But I mean, when we were in the back filming that video, did you have any idea we'd be sitting here in 3 different rooms and stuff, taping videos like this?
No, I had no idea. A lot has changed in the last 3 weeks. And not just our industry, everything. It's crazy how the world's really been turned on its head. But on that note, I kind of want to continue on that. There was a backstretch meeting this afternoon for the benefit of the ASHA members. Fred, I want you to talk to this a little bit more. And what was the purpose and what was the benefit of that meeting today?
I think it was 2 or 3-fold, Storm. One of the biggest issues is rumors in a backstretch. You can't stop them.
No.
You know, if people are stressed, so they start them or pass out information that isn't necessarily correct. So I've been working on some models of loss of revenue projections based on an unknown start date, but so doing 3 or 4 different models. And I told a couple of people on the board, that these are models that the president asked me to start working on. And so I said, 30% loss of revenue, 40% loss of revenue, 50% loss of revenue. It probably got misinterpreted, but it got out to the horsemen that we were going to cut the purses up to 50%. And that is incorrect. And so I wanted to get the membership there to explain it, to kind of break it down. And I'll kind of give you a quick synopsis on it. So if I take a number of 30% revenue loss when we start up, well, I have a projected start-up date, and so June 6th. So when we cancel races on March 15th until June 6th, that would be 21 days we did not race. Based on $50,000 a day, we generally average to race for is $1,050,000. If I take the Wednesdays out of July, or June, I'm sorry, that we probably would, we get up to about 24 days, which is $1,200,000. So that's about 25% of my overnight revenue. But we also didn't earn any revenue, but we didn't race. So when we start up, 25% of my revenue is gone, but it really doesn't impact the overnight purses going forward because you have that many less days. You follow that? Right. One of the big things I see is we get a certain amount of money from all simulcast product, different racetracks, everything shown here. That being also down because there's hardly no racetracks to show, and a lot of teletheaters have closed. So the revenue from it, which mostly goes directly to the stake program, is obviously less until we start up again too. So there's a lot of factors to it. So I took the horseman there. I tried to explain where the revenue came from, the 4 or 5 different streams that it comes from, and that we take 25% of the overall towards stakes and such as that. So in saying we lose 30% revenue, I would project that we lose somewhere between 6 to 10% of an overnight, 6 to 10% maybe of the stakes instead of 30%. And I think that need to be clear because the horsemen were starting to panic a little bit, thinking their purses could almost be cut in half or a third stuff. So yeah, it's fun in a way to do the numbers, but if people don't understand them, and so I wanted to go there and basically explain that. I wanted to let the horsemen know that I've been sending calendars back and forth with Paul Reinfeld, general manager of
Yeah.
the Century Group. We have a target date of June 6th that we would like to try to start up at Century Downs with government approval. And so the horsemen have that date. They can now set a schedule based on that date and target their horses if they had some turned out, if they had some. And, there's, like I explained to them, there's meetings going on sometimes twice every week, and we'll keep them updated as best we can with the information that we get. And so that's what they need. And so that's mostly what the was to answer questions, because a lot of people thought that the money we get this year was from what we made last year and they carry forward. That's not how it works in Alberta. It's almost on a monthly basis of what the slots make we get the following month. Some jurisdictions are different, but this is pretty tricky, and so my budget can change through the year and we have to tweak things. And anyway, I thought it was a really good meeting. Some decent questions were asked, and I hope answered properly to them. And yeah, I asked at the end, I asked 3 times if there was any more questions before I stopped, and I was comfortable that I answered it, as best I could for the industry. There's information I obviously don't have, and I'm not going to tell an untruth. I just said I don't know. There's meetings going on, and when we do know and can put it out, we certainly will.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Paul Reinfeld and coming back to Century Downs on June 6th, and Century Downs and Century Casinos, both Century Downs and Century Mile have been incredibly supportive throughout the suspension. Can you talk a little bit about how they've helped and their part in
Yeah, unbelievable, to be honest. I sat at the track and I watched other jurisdictions that were closed, locking the tracks and not letting them out. They could stay in the
yeah,
stable, not get out. Different jurisdictions. Century's been awesome. I tried to say to the horsemen, we don't even pay for the bedding we're using, all of it. We give them a $25 a month a horse or something, which if you were buying the Shave and Storm, yeah, you to pay to take it away costs Century money. For them to operate the track crew, they pay. We don't pay for that. They're paying for it without any income from their slots. So they've been over backwards. I think they've always been a great partner. I've said that since I met them first in 2014. I haven't ever changed my mind. They're great to deal with. They're very honest and upfront. They tell you what it is. We don't always agree, but we've always agreed. We have a meeting and we generally can come away, with something to take back to each other's parties. So very good partners, excellent, and yeah, I'm quite happy. They're the best I've ever dealt with.
yeah. I've gotten a few different questions through our media channels, and most have been concerning coming back to racing and whether or not when we do return to racing. And obviously, we don't know. You said you don't have all the answers. We have a projected date, but like Don said earlier, we had no idea that a month ago we had no idea that we were going to be sitting here in the situation that we're in. But people are wondering, are we going to be able to get back to racing faster if we don't race with spectators, and if that's something that's possible, or what that really looks like?
Which is some of the meetings coming up. We think we can do it, Storm, and I'm not putting anything down that the thoroughbreds can't do it, but it takes a tremendous lot more people to put on
Yeah.
a thoroughbred race card than it does a standard card. We don't need a big gate crew. We have a car driver and a starter, so
Hmm.
they would be segregated from everyone else.
Right.
The judges upstairs, the chart callers, the announcers, they all would have a different booth. They'd be segregated. We would have a 1 race paddock instead of a 3 race paddock, and we would have an empty stall in between each horse, so there's 10-foot distance. You have 1 person in the paddock, and then your driver from the horse, when it's let out by the head, to the
Mhm.
driver at the back is over 6 feet
Right.
clearance. In the race, if a horse's head was right on my helmet, he would still be 6 feet behind me,
Yeah.
right? If the bikes are approximately 5 feet wide, driver sits in the middle. So if you take 2 5-foot bikes, put them in the middle, you have a foot between the wheels. You have your 6 feet.
Oh, there you go.
So we think we can carry this off. Whatever safety precautions that would be needed.
Hmm.
We obviously need permission to try it.
For sure.
Certainly, we
Sure.
will. I think at some point we will certainly try to do it without the public to start, but obviously our signal could go up to a satellite. There's very little product around North America. I believe that, we'd get a lot of action, a lot of people
Yeah.
wagering on it, and obviously that generates revenue for everybody.
Yeah, that would be ideal. That'd
I
be
think
great.
Storm, if I could just add something to that too, and it's something that Fred can touch on a little bit too, is it's easier in some jurisdictions than others to get back to racing right away. As Fred said, in Ontario, they get a grant of money for their racing at the beginning of the
Yeah.
year, and they're not tied at all to any of the casino money or other money except for what they get from their handle. So for them, it's just kind of like getting back up and getting started. Here, as Fred's dealing with numbers and days and different things we have to do, it's obviously a lot more tricky because we kind of earn our revenue as we're going along. So that plays into it a little bit also, but that's also Fred and a bunch of different people are involved in meetings, trying to find the best ways that we can do it. But as he said, I think that standardbird racing, it's amazing how so many things fit together, that the 6 foot distance and the amount of people that are back there really isn't much. It's just people using their head, kind of like if an office was opened back up and everybody not going and congregating around the water cooler or in the lunchroom or something like that. You have to be a little bit more careful around those kind of ideas. But the way the race is set up, the way the horses are, the less people that you need to operate racing and stuff makes it quite a bit easier for us to go get back to that, as long as it's fiscally feasible to do it.
Most of the trainers see each other on a daily basis at Century Downs anyway. They're
Yeah.
jogging and training. They see each other. So to get them to race would only take, follow a very tight line, but you add the starter, you add the car driver, the judges, the announcer. They're segregated from the horsemen.
Definitely.
So the same horsemen that see each other every day basically would see each other to race.
Yeah.
There'd be a few that would chip in. We would obviously have the protocols in place that Woodbine used, temperature testing for the humans when they come in. If they have a temperature, they're not admitted.
Mhm.
So there would be protocols in place, and we would follow whatever that was put forward that needed to be put forward. And I'm sure Century would have a bunch, and we would work, hand in hand like we always try to, and make it happen.
Right.
So if they weren't admitted, Fred, with the thermometer, you'd have your colors back there in the back, ready to jump in, right?
The horses would be admitted.
And I guess kind of my final question that I want to touch on today is every Tuesday you are having update calls with all the stakeholders, with Horse Racing Alberta, with Century, and everybody who's really trying their best to get us back on our feet. Can you give me a little bit of insight about what the tone of those calls are and what you guys have been discussing over the last few weeks?
Uh, a lot of anxious moments, I think, from all the parties. This was thrust upon everybody. Like, nobody has experience to draw from, I don't think, on
Right.
something like this. And of course, HRA is leading the meetings, chairing the meetings. They're dealing with government, trying to see where we can get and go. Having said that, some of the breeds, like the A thoroughbred, are in their normal pre-race routine. They don't normally race till the first week of May. So
Right.
this is normal for them, just training. I'm not saying it's 100% normal, but it's kind of along the same routine. The owners are used to paying bills without racing until the first part of May.
Yeah.
The community thoroughbreds race at May too, but have less, maybe, I don't know how to put this, but less of a cash windfall to carry them farther. So if they don't start on time, it's a little more difficult for them.
Mhm.
But for us, it was more difficult, Storm, in that we had 7 weeks off. We had our time. We saved our money for that. We used it to get through that break. We had only just started up, raced 2 days in March, and then we're down again.
Right.
So the people's pockets are pretty low to start with. So a little more stressful, I think, for our side of the industry. And we've obviously put that forward.
Yeah.
Bill Andrew, the president of ASHA, is on that call every week along with myself. HRA is getting questions thrown at them left and right. They're trying to deal with government, trying to get answers. The government's pretty tied up this day and age, and we're not the top rung of the ladder by any means, So it's a difficult situation. It's stressful, but I guess if we're all trying to work towards the future, you have to wait until you get some information and act on it, but be ready for it. And this was one of the reasons I tried to, get the date with Paul, calendars back and forth, is to have the horsemen shoot for a date. We probably wouldn't start racing before that date. and hopefully with government approval, we could race on that date. So it's a big process, and again, it all kind of flows back to HRA. They're the regulatory governing body. They deal with government direct, and we have to take direction from them.
Right. Definitely. I guess finally, like, is there anything else that either of you believe is pertinent to add, or anything that needs to be cleared up?
No, other than I'm pretty happy with the morale. Uh, we've done, I think, as an association, we've done as much as we can for now. Like we gave them, like Don said, a little stipend to help them with their feed and stuff through the month.
Yeah.
HRA obviously paid half of that, and we appreciate it. But I think, taking that burden away from them at least, the next thing to do is to try and get some race days, to get some purse money to the owners. How long can they go, paying for horses that aren't generating? The bills don't stop. So that's the next big hurdle I see. Uh, and that way, if you have owners paying trainers paying their help and buying feed and everything, they don't have to go get served, that CERB that the feds are putting on, because they'll be generating and have jobs,
Yeah.
right? So, I think, we're probably going to need at some point a kickstart from the government, I think, financially to get it up and running, but it's like wheel. Once it's going, it'll keep going.
Right.
So I'm optimistic, and we'll do what we can from Ash's point of view with direction from the board. And I don't know what else. I'm trying to stay positive with the whole thing. I mean, again, nobody really knows how long this will take. Premier Kenny said he'd like to kind of kickstart rural towards the end of May, which would kind of work in a little bit with us. So hopefully, and I guess I'd end off for me. I'd like to say happy Easter weekend, everybody, and hope they all enjoy a good meal and better days ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Don, is there anything else that you would like to add before we sign off?
Well, I just like to add, especially when people start thinking, and sometimes the horse racing industry is thought as being like takers, and they don't understand the funding and questions and answers that Fred is bringing up are very important things for people to learn to see exactly how the industry works. But in a situation like this, a normal business can a lot of times lay off people, lock the doors, and then all they've got really is light utilities to pay for. This industry is completely different in that those horses need to eat, they need to be cared for, they need to be exercised, there's so much that needs to go on a day-to-day business. So it's so much more complicated situations. Some of the horses aren't even affected by this program in the fact that like 2-year-olds just starting to be trained, they're still on a regular process where they're going down just like they would be, because they don't really start racing till late July or August. So their schedules haven't even changed. So people who aren't generating revenue are now all of a sudden still having to do, normally they would be earning some money with their other horses and helping to pay for their young ones going along. But right now, as Fred said, from a lot of sides of it, there's just money coming out. So I think we're trying to stress that with government whenever we get a chance as much as we possibly can, in that a lot of times, and also the government is a lot of times the big winner from when we're operating, in that out of the slot machines and out of handle and stuff, they take a pretty good chunk too without having to staff in there. So we kind of pay for our own way in a lot of ways, but these horses still need to kind of get going along. From Alberta's perspective, compared to other provinces like Ontario, I think even today, I think the numbers were up a little bit higher, maybe in the 60s, but we haven't had a day in almost a week that have been close to 100 cases and on a daily basis. So we think that Alberta's been fairly lucky so far, and maybe it's because of the action that was taken and everybody staying at home and trying to stay safe as much as possible. But hopefully that's a positive sign if we don't see a big spike in the next week to 10 days, that any projections that are out there will be achievable, if not maybe able to beat a little bit and stuff. So we're all trying to stay optimistic and trying to move forward the best that we possibly can. And we're just trying to do almost as much business as usual, except for where none of the owners are getting paychecks and stuff right now, which would be nice to have that change sooner rather than later. But again, this is something that nobody in there, unless you got a crystal ball and you look back 20 or 30 years ago. And I know people look at Bill Gates and they talk about all the different models and different things that could have come up with and stuff. But I mean, he was talking about that 30 years ago. So I'm not sure all that money, if we'd have been investing that or doing something with that, we might have this gigantic war chest or something. But it's
Uh,
interesting times. And like I said, we're all trying to, I guess my final thing is just everybody, just to try to stay positive as you can in your own personal lives and stuff. This is kind of a tough weekend, being a holiday weekend, that everybody'd like to spend time with family. Both my parents are 88 years old and are obviously really in the wrong range, that if I happen to carry something, it would be pretty bad right away. So we're not able to spend as much time with family as we can, but hopefully they've got something that can keep them a little bit more upbeat and know that there's a lot of people in the backgrounds are doing as much as they can, Fred especially, and a lot of the other people, to try to get things going as soon as possible and to get back to whatever normal will look like. I don't think anyone knows going to be in the future, but as close to whatever we can get to, that would be great.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Fred. Is there anything else you need to add, or?
No, I look forward to our next trackside tips.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. This isn't quite as fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Storm, and happy Easter.
Happy Easter. Take care.
Thanks, Storm. And one last thing. As we get anything where there's any kind of updates or different things that we're moving forward, obviously we'll try to have one or two more of these as we're moving
Yeah.
along, so that we can pass on information to people and keep them informed. Because there's nothing, none of us are trying to keep anything closed behind doors. It's just tough to find ways. And now with the great aspect of social media, it's great to be able to get it across to a more broader group this way. So thanks again for helping us out this way.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.